Before that, I had just like odd jobs here and there. I was a plumber for a little while, straight out of high school. That was interesting. But yeah.
Do you have one good plumber story you want to share real quick?
Oh, damn. Uh, I have a lot of them.
I'm Shelby Westcott, and I'm the managing editor here at Merchant Maverick. And we are here today to talk to our CEO to find out about Merchant Maverick's story. So first of all, can you introduce yourself, please?
Yes. My name is Ahmad. I'm the CEO of Merchant Maverick. Been doing this since 2009. And yeah, just what can I say? Love what I do, love our team, love our business, love our brand. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the interview and answering some questions that you have, Shelby.
Perfect. So before we get into the story of Merchant Maverick, we want to get a glimpse into Ahmad before Merchant Maverick. So what kind of work were you doing before you started this business?
So before Merchant Maverick, I was doing internet marketing and SEO. But if we go back even further, what got me started online just in general was selling on eBay. I didn't really go to college. So it was like 2002, I felt like all of my peers that went to college were graduating and starting their careers. So I felt some pressure to just figure my stuff out, and I remember reading that selling on eBay was this thing. And right around the same time, my dad that worked for this company went out of business and they left him like this building full of equipment. It was just industrial equipment, just anything that you could imagine related to industrial machinery and whatnot. So I just started selling all of that piece by piece. I bought a digital camera. I set up a photography studio. I took photographs of each item. I would research the products. I'd write descriptions. I'd handle all the shipping and customer service and logistics. And I feel like for me, in hindsight, eBay was basically my formal education because I didn't go to college, and it's where it it brought me to where I'm at now because it taught me all of the facets of e-commerce and internet marketing. And then so after I learned all of that, I felt like I had a foothold in this particular career, and I knew what my career path was from then on out. So then I went on to found another company that didn't do so well. It was this online automotive website. But then after that, I was hired on as an internet marketing manager for a networking hardware company like Cisco. We would sell networking hardware. And then after that, I was hired as an SEO at an agency, search engine optimization, and then tried to start another company after that. And then the that was the catalyst really to what got me to start Merchant Maverick. And that was right around 2009. So from '02 to '09, I feel like was the trajectory of my career path and what I'm doing now. And before that, I had just like odd jobs here and there. I was a plumber for a little while, straight out of high school. That was interesting. But yeah.
Do you have one good plumber story you want to share real quick?
Oh, damn. Uh, I have a lot of them. Plumbing was a hard job, and it's funny because a lot of people in my life were like, "You need to stick with this. This is a good trade. It's good money." But for me, it was just I like to solve complex problems, and I felt like plumbing was just at some point it was just too simplified. But the fun, let's see. I've crawled under homes. I've like crawled over dead cats and rodents. There's this one time when we work with heavy machinery, and this one thing is called a pipe cutter, and it was the switch would malfunction, so you sometimes it would stay on, and it would be hard to turn this thing off. And this one time, and it's sitting on the back of a truck. So this one time, I turned it on, and I'm cutting the pipe, and I'm using this wrench, and I can't turn the machine off. So the wrench turns around, catches the tailgate of the car, lifts the entire machine up off of the back of the truck and drops it on the ground. And we're talking oil everywhere. on a customer's driveway. I mean, I didn't like, I was terrified. I was terrified. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to tell my boss. That's one. Another one's I think I put on a valve incorrectly and it flooded the house. Yeah, there've been a few plumbing stories, but I will say it was a very fulfilling job. When I went home, I knew that I'd put in a day's work. So it was definitely very fulfilling. It just wasn't my career path.
So you say that you were working in SEO and you had been starting these companies, and there had to be a moment where there was a spark where Merchant Maverick was formed. So talk us through that moment where you thought, okay, I have a new idea for a business. What was that moment for you?
Yeah, so I feel like the ingredients for that spark came from multiple sources in multiple time frames. It was like connecting these dots that at the time to me felt like they were being provided to me by the universe or something. And what I mean is like I serendipitously met a couple of guys that owned affiliate review sites very similar to what we do now, and they were doing really well for themselves. So to me, that was the first ingredient. It was a proof of concept. I was like, wait a minute, these guys are doing it. Maybe I can do something like that. And then right before I started Merchant Maverick, I was trying to start a business with my cousin, and we ran into this problem of finding a reputable merchant account credit card processor that was willing to sign us up because we were in a high risk category. And so we bailed on that business because we couldn't get a merchant account. We couldn't accept credit cards. The only way that we would have been able to run the business was through PayPal. And we just felt like that was too restricted. So that was the second ingredient. And then I remembered that review sites can be lucrative by meeting those guys. And then I recognized that credit card processing could be a good area to build a review site. And so then I went and did a little bit of research and recognized that there was this huge gap because many credit card processors were shady at the time, and consumers needed help navigating these landmines, so to speak. So that's when everything came together. And I feel like that was the real spark. It was just, those were the ingredients. And the spark actually happened when I was able to put them all together.
And then what was your first step that made Merchant Maverick a reality?
More research. So I read somewhere that if you have a business idea, you should spend 50 to 100 hours just researching the market. What for me, it wasn't necessarily about creating a business plan or anything, but although I did create like a strategy document that I think I shared with you just yesterday, but it's more about understanding what the market is inside and out and figuring out what's missing, where the gaps are that I could fill. And I quickly found out that most review sites were fake pay to play type websites, and they just weren't being honest with their reviews. So that gave me the idea of taking a very candid approach to my review process to stand out as trustworthy. So the first step was by far the research that I did, and that really set up the, I guess you could say, the value proposition for the company.
What were those early days like as a company?
Oh man, I love they say the journey is better than the destination. Like I look back on those days with so much fondness. It was frightening, exciting, and fulfilling all at the same time. Like after I got the uh, domain and basic WordPress setup, every day for me was filled with either admin, like early admin work, development work, research, and writing. So I'd wake up around 10 o'clock in the morning, and the mornings have always been my admin and development type work hours. So from 10 to 12, I would either work on improving the website, fixing things here and there, or at that time, I had a client that was supplementing some of my income. So I would do a little bit of client work from 10 to 12 a.m., but it was mostly admin work, maybe doing a little bit of research and making updates to the website. And then I'd go for a run. So around noon, I'd go for a trail run and come back, grab lunch, and then I'd prep my laptop, I'd pack it all up and I'd go to the local Starbucks or the Pete's Coffee or whatever. And that's when I feel like the real work began. I would start researching different credit card processors. So every day I had maybe a new processor that I was researching, or every couple of days. So I would handle all that research. I would go through their negative reviews. I'd go through their entire website. I'd check out all of their documentation. I would um, research everything inside and out. And then after that would begin the writing. And so once I started the research and the writing at the coffee shop, I'd probably be there for about 4 hours, and then I'd pack up and go home. And I would repeat that process over and over again.
What was it about the coffee shop that that provided the environment you liked for that kind of writing work and research work?
For some reason, when I change my environment, I feel like I'm more creative. So, and I would bounce from coffee shop to coffee shop. I think it's the novelty of the environment that does something for my brain. And so being in a different place every so often would just, for some reason, would stimulate my mind.
That's awesome. So at some point you realized, hey, I need help. So who was your first hire at Merchant Maverick? What was the impetus for the hire? And how did you know you were ready to bring someone onto the team?
Yeah, the first person I hired was my cousin, and I hired him to help me break ground in the new vertical point of sale. And it was at around like the 3 year mark, I think, and I was finally earning enough income to hire someone without it affecting my living expenses. And I felt very confident that there was an opportunity to expand into verticals that were closely related to credit card processing. I had built enough of a foundation in credit card processing that it was time to follow a new opportunity. So the confidence came from laying the groundwork in credit card processing, proving that that concept works, proving that that concept can generate revenue, and then identifying like a side vertical or ancillary vertical of point of sale, which is very closely related. And so I won't say that it was easy. I had to overcome a lot of fear. That first hire is very hard just because you are concerned that that person might not be able to do it the way that you are. Like there are a lot of fears that you might lose money, but um, I think that just being in that position of knowing that it was working for credit card processing and that point of sale was very closely related, and I knew that my cousin was a strong writer, it just fit well.
And then, yeah, so the next question is about business blunders then in those early years. So what do you look back on now with a little bit of embarrassment?
I you
Sorry.
know, I, um, I I'll be honest, I've had a hard time thinking about the blunders because I just it's not, I have this tendency to be very conscientious despite my like propensity to take risks. Like if you ask me to go skiing, I'll probably injure myself because I don't assess risk very well. I'm just like I bulldoze forward. But when it comes to building something, I feel like I'm the mason that like makes sure every brick is clean and I'm laying it properly. So I was very conscientious about not committing any blunders. And I think that's why either my memory sucks or I'm having a very hard time about the kinds of blunders that I committed. But if I was to try to pick one, I would say, um, I don't even know if this is a blunder. It was just r- m- giving a bigger brand a negative review and then feeling the backlash or hearing the backlash about it and then wondering if it was a blunder, like being freaked out about, well, did I do the research right? They're calling me out on this. Is this correct? And then going back and fact checking the work, so it felt like a blunder, but at the end of the day, it was like I did so much research. I put so much effort into the content that I felt very confident after reviewing my work that it wasn't actually a blunder. But I don't know. if I think about it a little bit more, maybe I'll come around to it. So maybe by the end of the interview, I'll be able to think of a few blunders.
Well, I can also ask it this way, and this is a curveball question, so I
Okay.
apologize, but are there any blunders that a lot of small business startups make in their first 5 years that you avoided, that you knew going into, you're like, nope, that's not going to be my story?
Ooh. Mm, I think it's all relative. So one blunder could be over leveraging. So getting too much financing too early, assuming that there's more opportunity than there actually is, pursuing opportunity that you haven't really proven the concept of. But sometimes that works. Sometimes over leveraging and taking that kind of risk ends up working out in your favor. But for me, I was more conservative in the sense that I didn't want to take on any funding. I didn't want to take on any debt. And I was very concerned about profitability instead of growing the business and getting more market share. I feel like that's a blunder that many businesses face early on because many of them assume that they need that funding. They they need to grow fast. And so growing slow for them maybe clouds their thinking a little bit and they take on more risk than they should.
Absolutely. Okay, we'll move away from blunders and mistakes. Those aren't fun to think about anyway. So we'll go to successes. Was there an early metric in your mind that determined success for Merchant Maverick? Was there a point when you feel like you reached that goal? And how did it feel?
Honestly, I ignored most of the metrics in the beginning and I focused on being helpful to the user. I mean, I didn't even try to monetize the website for the first 6 months to a year. I obviously monitored traffic, but when I say I ignored it, I largely avoided trying to optimize for traffic by using it as like a key performance indicator. And, I guess the one metric that I was obsessed with was user feedback that like came in the form of blog comments or direct emails. So hearing how helpful my content was to my users was very, very fulfilling. That was, I guess I could call that a metric, but when we talk about traditional KPIs and traditional metrics for an online media site where we're talking about page views and traffic and monetization and money and whatnot, I largely ignored that in the very beginning because I didn't want it to like cloud my judgment, I guess, or distract me from being helpful to the user. But later, because at some point you do have to make money, and I was putting all my living expenses on my credit card. So later, after I had heard the user feedback for months on end, and I felt very fulfilled. I still needed to pay my bills. So then that's when I started paying attention to the revenue. And I feel like if the one metric, like the one goal that meant the most to me from from a traditional metric perspective, it was the year that I made enough money to cover all of my living expenses because that feeling of security and satisfaction that came with it was very, very nice.
Yes. There's someone who gave you advice in those early years that you look back on fondly.
Uh, I have a very hard time seeking advice from other people. I've learned that about myself. I read somewhere that there are three legs to the stool of just like mastery. One of them is mentorship. One of them is learning by absorbing information, and then the other one's learning by doing. I usually rely on the two legs of the stool, and mentorship is the one that I've like just naturally doesn't come natural to me because by nature I'm an introvert, so I rely on books for my advice instead of obtaining it from others. And I would say that that's probably slowed my progress to some extent because you can obtain summarized information through another human being faster than reading a book. Although, I don't know, with Chat GPT these days, I'm sure that's probably changed. You could summarize books now. But in the early years of Merchant Maverick, I feel like the best advice that I received was from multiple sources and multiple books, and that was about persistence. So there was this quote by Calvin Coolidge about persistence and being relentless about it, achieving your goals. And I've read books about being laser focused and burning your ships behind you so you don't have any source of retreat. And there were multiple times in the early years of starting Merchant Maverick where I wanted to quit. And I feel like the only reason why I persisted was because of that advice. It just like replayed in my mind over and over again. It's like, burn your bridges, or burn your ships behind you. No source of retreat, persistence, laser focus. Because I have a tendency to get distracted by new ideas, and so once the dopamine hit of the initial startup phase started to fade away, and then I noticed that revenue, uh, I noticed I became concerned about whether the business model was was correct or not, or that it was sustainable or not, or that it could like, you know, become successful. That's when I started worrying about it. But I just remembered this advice about persistence that I had read, and so that kept me pushing.
If you could go back in time and give yourself any additional pieces of advice, what would you tell a young Ahmad starting this business?
Collaborate and delegate faster. I always say this, like, if you want to go to the moon, it's better to find someone that's already been there and collaborate with that person to help you get to the moon. And like, I'm consistently amazed by how diversely intelligent people are and how valuable it is to have someone that's highly capable of their skill set working alongside you. So, as I mentioned before, I'm an introvert. I feel like this lone wolf type. For the longest time, I avoided hiring and collaborating with others, and I feel like that slowed my progress down. But once you recognize that collaborating with others is really the only way to solve complex problems, the sooner that you do it, the better.
Absolutely. Is there anything else about Merchant Maverick's origin story that you want people to know?
Um, I have nothing.
That's good. That means we covered it.
I feel like we did.
Thanks for sharing.
Of course. Thank you.